Okay, you're very welcome back to the Rossie GA podcast in association with Shannonside FM. I'm joined by former player Conor Devaney to look back on Roscommon's 2-15-21 point draw against Meath last Saturday. Conor, you're welcome again. I suppose, look, first off, we might just get into the result. It's a draw. It keeps us alive in terms of finishing second, third, or even fourth, depending on the result against Cork. So what's just your own first reflections on the game that you saw on Saturday?
Yeah, I think the draw doesn't really matter a whole lot, as you suggested there. Unfortunately, with this group stage, the way the competition is at the moment, as we've seen, most of it comes down to the last game. So I think that's probably why they're changing the system next year. It does come down to the last game. The last game is against Cork, and I know a draw might do us, but really we have to go and win. So that was almost always going to be the case. That's what most people predicted. It would come down to the last game in the group when the fixtures were out, and that's the way it is. And there's every possibility we could beat Cork in Portlaoise in 2 weeks' time. So the result against Meath, I suppose, given that most people thought, and I thought myself, Meath were going better than Roscommon, then the draw was probably a good result in that we haven't been playing well. We probably still didn't play well in the Hyde at the weekend, and to get a draw against a Meath team who have been playing well is probably a good result. But then again, it doesn't matter that much either.
It's interesting to say that. I mean, it was kind of a mixed reaction. Some people were disappointed. Some people maybe still weren't too happy with the performance. Other people I've seen that were quite happy with the performance, maybe because that's just because we haven't been playing well. I mean, would it be fair to say that's the best performance we put in, though, since probably Cork and Porky Queeve when they won by, I think, 14 points? That was the start of March. There hasn't been, I think, only one win since then against London. So would it be fair to say it was probably the best we've seen in a while, at least?
Yeah, I would say that. I'd say there was parts of the play that was better than we've seen. Some of the attack of now was very hit and miss, but when it was good and when it worked, it was far better than what we've been doing up to now. And some of what worked was sometimes, for example, now I thought Senan Lamb was one of the better players. When he looked up and kicked past, especially through the middle, things opened up down the middle where we got our goal chances in the first half and obviously the 2 goals. So some things worked better than in previous games. So maybe it's a sign that there's some improvement, but it's difficult to know. It was still very patchy, and still, yet again, unfortunately, a lot of players just not playing up to the standard that we know them to play.
Because after Roscommon got the 2 goals, and I think Brian Stack had a chance, Diarmuid had a chance, who was probably just a bit indecisive as well. We actually had 4 clear goal chances in the first half, took 2 of them. The disappointing thing for me was that we easily got through in the first half. We didn't seem to get in behind at all in the second half. And if you look at even the shot map, I'd love to nearly see it. All the shots were nearly felt like they were outside that 2-point arc, that we didn't really get in behind Meath in the second half for some reason.
Yeah, and I think some of that you see it in other games too. You have a breeze, now the breeze was swirling the height, but I think it did favour Roscommon for the most part in the second half. And you see that 2-point arc line, like we were talking off air, Enda got 3 of them from there. He's not really going to carry it any further or look in at all. If he sees he's on the arc and he knows there's a wind with him on his back, he's probably going to take the option of a shot if it's on. You could see he even got a left-footed one there from the arc. So, they're not that difficult with that breeze. So that's probably at least part of the reason why you mightn't be looking up as much. But I would say in general, even though we got those chances in the first half, there was still any amount of attacks where we were doing our stuff that we were doing all year, which was hand passing it around the arc. And actually 3 times we did that, we lost the ball. There was one occasion I was watching where 6 passes were made across the arc. And that's fine if you're keeping the ball. But all 6 players, none of the 6 players looked inside at all as they passed it across. So it's fine if you look inside, is there a full forward free? And then you decide to pass, but none of them actually looked inside. And that includes some of our better players who aren't just at the moment doing that, like Kieran. Brian Stack was on the ball in that move. Eddie Nolan was on the ball in that move. And it just didn't look in, and it's just pass. And eventually we lost the ball. So that happened a few times, which is what we've been doing. And we need to get that habit out of the system.
Yeah, are we probably maybe just too programmed, too rigid in our ways sometimes that there's not enough maybe risk being taken? I think you could say risk was being taken by taking those 2-point shots into the second half, but then again, with that wind, you're going to take them. And we refer to after the Galway game, in terms of getting shots off and that, are we getting enough shots? Are our lads taking, their men on enough? And maybe a bit more of that at the weekend, but we're still maybe just, again, old habits of still not progressing even to this new game that is, fast counter-attacking play. That's what's going to get you scores quick.
Yeah, there was so many times in both halves, but in the first half when it seemed to be on a little bit more, where there was one or two players inside in loads of space, and you could just kick it in, even if you thought it was 50-50, but they weren't even looking. Anytime it was kicked in, we actually, more often than not, won the ball. There was one or two that we spilled, like Darragh Craig came off his chest with a good ball from Enda, but mostly it did actually work once you kicked it in. And if you do kick it in, you're losing the ball closer to the opposition goal. So the chance of them getting a score straight away is unlikely. So you're better off just kicking it in. And there's so much space. Now, Meath had the same issue. Their number 14, Conor, was excellent. Yeah. But he was in oceans of space for the entire first half. And although he did score 6 points in the end, he should have got a lot more ball into him in the first half, especially with the breeze at their back. It was 1-on-1, and sometimes he wasn't even looking for it because he's just, as you say, programmed that these players don't even look. So what's the point in moving? But anytime he did, and anytime anybody looked, he was on. And I think it's no coincidence they had to put Brian Stack back in him, which lessened our attacking ability, because when he's centre back, we're definitely a better team. But unfortunately, it nearly always ends up that he has to go and man mark the better player of the opposition. So.
Yeah, and we're still probably, I suppose, changing the team and personnel and that. We've seen Enda move out to midfield with Eddie Nolan. We still just can't seem to get a foothold to midfield, and it's nearly maybe going back to the Galway game, Kerry, now this game. It's difficult for the kickouts. I know with the ball having to go outside the arc, but we just seem to be, struggling badly on our own kickouts and the opposition's kickouts at the moment.
Yeah, we haven't got a midfield pair that's working really. It didn't really work in terms of winning primary possession at the weekend again. It's not probably going to work this year at all. So we have to just come up with scores some other way. Breaking ball has to be better. We have to work on different kickouts, especially the last day. Every single kickout, I can't think of one that was different. They were nearly all just chipped up to one side or the other, and it was a fight for it, where we more often than not unfortunately lost. And with the breeze, I expected Cards kickouts to go a little bit further, but they were kind of just floating up, which makes it difficult for the two midfielders, to be fair. So the kickouts could be better, they could be more varied, and we're going to just have to start smashing them more rather than there was a couple of times where Eddie tried to catch it, but didn't really get his two hands on the ball. So there's a lot of work to be done. Probably not going to come up with it this year, so we just have to battle hard around there and try to get our scores.
Is it maybe the fear from, I suppose, a goalkeeper, maybe Conor Carroll's perspective, that we've seen some of these short kickouts badly punished, either to goal chances, to black cards, and that I suppose with that arc, that if you do go short, the consequence now is so severe. Is maybe that playing into a part that we're maybe just going ultra safe sometimes?
Yeah, and I think the six backs and the two midfielders are kind of expecting where it's going to go, and that's just it. There seems to be no other plan. Whereas you do see other teams, now Dublin were poor at the weekend, but they, in the first half, were getting some nice kickouts off straight down the middle to kind of the centre back position after about 20 seconds of loads of movement. There was kind of no movement from Roscommon six backs and two midfielders at the weekend. So inevitably it's going to just be chipped out to the right in the midfield, one side or the other, and you have to fight for it. So you could work on that in 2 weeks, definitely, because we will need it, because we haven't won, we'd say, primary possession percentages so far this year. We're probably not going to win it again against Cork, so we do have to mix those kickouts up a bit.
I suppose, look, the positives, and it's been brought up a good bit after the game, the fact, I suppose, Enda got 3 2-pointers in the second half, and he was more prominent, I suppose. He'd know himself maybe against the likes of Galway, and Kerry just couldn't get into the game. He was prominent throughout, even in the first half, in fairness. So I suppose to get, if we're looking for positives going into the Cork game, like realistically, we need the likes of Enda Smith and we need Kieran and Jeremy and our big players, coming into a bit of form. So I suppose to see Enda play better was a positive, straight away anyways.
Well, we need them scoring, and he scored. But the thing about Enda is, I wouldn't have him midfield, because if we need him scoring, then he needs to be far more advanced. And to have him in a midfield pair that's not really working, it's not good for him. It's not good for Roscommon. We need him scoring. So he needs to be in those positions where he got the 2 pointers from more often. And that means, in my eyes, I don't think he should be midfield. He could be anywhere else, really. He could be even one of the three inside, and he could be the farthest one out and trying to get on the loop around the arc and get those scores more. Hasn't really been tried. I don't know why. Obviously, he can score. He scored 3 at the weekend. So I keep saying it. I think he needs to be closer to goal. And obviously, an issue is midfield, and they're trying to see if he can do it there. But it's not really working in terms of that. So you have other options. You have Doyle, you have Shane Killorn. So they could mix it up there and try and put Enda further in towards goals, because if Diarmuid isn't scoring and Kieran isn't scoring and Darragh Craig isn't scoring, well, then you're left with Enda to do the scoring. So he needs to be more advanced positions. But hopefully these players will start scoring. Well, they need to against Cork. So it's as simple as that.
Does it suit Enda to play closer to goal? I mean, I suppose we're so accustomed maybe to him playing as a half forward / midfield, running from deep, that we actually haven't seen him probably play in a full forward line, or too often. He might drift in the odd time here and there. Would it suit him to play inside as one of those three?
Well, I don't think he needs to be. I would say it wouldn't suit him to be like a full forward and in there all the time, like Conor the Meath full forward was, very much just a full forward. I'm not sure that would suit him. But I think there could be 2 inside, and he could be the one furthest out. He could be like at the top of the D, and he could be going on loops around there, because we're in lots of possession around the arc. So he can be one of those players that are looping around to try and get the finish. I would like to see him getting on the ball in a shooting position more often than he has been. So I can't really think of any other way of doing it. He could be. Kieran is probably going to be centre forward, so he could be inside and kind of coming out at the top of the D. Could be an option, at least for a while. I think it's worth trying.
The other forwards, Jeremy's got 1-4. He got a goal. He got a 2 point from play and a 2 point free. I suppose then you're looking at maybe Kieran's just not happening for him at the moment. He had a decent league in spells, just probably the last 3 games just hasn't quite happened. Darragh Craig got a few points in the first half. He'd probably be disappointed with the second half, along with maybe Ben O'Carroll. They both had a few chances. So I suppose the problem we're in here is that Enda played well, but we're probably looking again, unfortunately, like a lot of other games, maybe 1 forward playing well and the rest just not quite at it.
Yeah, I think with Ben, he always tries to do things right, and he's trying to do the right thing. He wins a lot of ball. It was noticeable the last day. I think he just needs to simply shoot more. He's in positions. He's on the ball, and I think he's closer to the goals than he thinks he is. And he's well able to get space. One quick turn, and he's got space. But he needs to shoot then. He doesn't need to try and take on his man a second time, go over and back a third time, or look for a pass. He is closest to goal, so he just needs to take one jink and shoot. Otherwise, we're not going to get scores if players aren't doing that. Like we said it the last time we were talking, take on your man and shoot. But particularly him, because he's closest to goals when he wins a ball. And he tries to maybe do too much jinking and laying off and maybe trying to go again. It doesn't happen. There was several opportunities for him to shoot the last day where I don't think he shot. And again, just to mention, I think Senan Lamb was one of the better players as an attacking threat. And the simple reason for that is he was one of our few players that actually looked up and looked inside, and he made a couple of lovely kick passes into the full forward line around the D area. And some of them, there was one of them definitely that was just 50-50. He saw 1 versus 1. Could have been Darragh Craig or Ben, I forget which it was at the time. And they won it. It was 50-50, but they won it, and the score came off it. So he's willing to take risks, and he definitely, anytime he's on the ball and soloing, he's looking up and looking inside, which can't be said for a lot of our players, which is disappointing.
Yeah, it was a game that could have went either way. Like, we could have easily lost it as well as win it. I suppose the disappointing thing I would have taken from it is, I think with about 12 or 13 minutes to go, Diarmuid gets a 2 pointer. We go a point up. We don't score again for the rest of the game with the win behind us. That's very disappointing. 5 scores as well in the second half. I only found that out actually after the game. 5 scores, 5 2 pointers. So it equates to 10 points in It's only 5 scores. Like that's poor in itself, really. That's disappointing. They'll take away from that. 5 scores with that wind isn't enough.
Yeah. Again, you're making the argument for me to get rid of the 2-point arc, because I think it's absolutely not adding anything to the game at all. So yes, I agree. That is disappointing to not score for 10 minutes when you really need to score, when you have a wind at your back. Is disappointing to, like, haven't seen Enda how easy those 3 scores were for him. Could other players not try and get themselves into those positions and take a risk and go for it? Obviously, it didn't happen, so it's something to be worked on.
Well, you say a risk. I mean, I think actually in that 10-minute period, like Ben had a shot with his weak foot outside the arc. Rory Fallon had one. I think Enda missed one. I think maybe Jeremy probably missed one as well. But they all seem to be outside the arc, where you were thinking, like, geez, even 1 or 2 single pointers, it would have won us the game. So it was like we were nearly forcing the 2 pointers with the wind a lot in the second half.
Yeah, I'd agree. That does happen, and you'd see it in other games as well. And there's a lot of shots from outside the arc that are dropping short that people shouldn't be going for in different games. Happened in the Roscommon game as well. I think the arc, just to go back to it, has psychologically kind of interrupted a lot of players. And one thing that was very interesting on the weekend, it's the first time in a long time that I actually saw a score kicked from outside the 45 with Rian O'Neill in Croke Park. And like, scoring from the 45 used to be reasonably normal. It used to be 2 or 3 points a game from the 45. That's where defences were set up, on the 45, not 5 yards back from it. And players like Kieran Murtagh could score from 45, and now, because the arc is drawn on the pitch, psychologically every player has to get right up to the line of the arc and then take their shot, instead of, like Rian O'Neill showed at the weekend, nobody near him. Why not just shoot from the 45? So it's just the whole arc thing is just very strange in a lot of ways, really.
Yeah, because I know from the very start, and I'll hand it to you because I don't like the 2-point free. You said that right at the start in January. I think that's something that needs to be looked at. I know the argument is for fouling, but it just feels too harsh of a penalty. I mean, look, this midfield mark nonsense as well. We've seen it in the Cork Kerry game. A lot of instances. I think there was a few in the Roscommon game at the weekend that weren't pulled up on. I think that's the thing now. If a fella catches a ball in the middle and there's any sort of touch, are appealing for an advancement. So would you get rid of the 2-point arc altogether then?
Yeah, I don't know what it's adding to the game. I can't think of anything that the arc is actually adding to the game. It's another strange thing about the arc. A lot of things that are just a bit odd about it. The arc, the way it's drawn on the pitch, I think it affected one of the shots in the first half. I think it was, it must have been a Meath player, corner forward, the top right corner. Yeah, he took a shot, which the arc drawn on the pitch finishes at the 20-metre line. Yeah. So if you were to score a sideline from the 13-metre line, it's not, which isn't unheard of. People do it from the outside the boot if there's a bit of a breeze or something. That's now a 1 point. I don't know why the arc isn't drawn all the way to the end line. Is there any reason for that? I don't know. I haven't heard anyone say what the reason, but there was definitely a point that was very close. If the arc had been drawn all the way in for Meath in the first half, I think that was a 1-pointer that, like, it was a better point than any 2-pointer. Should have been a 2-pointer. So it's just another strange thing with the arc. Why the person painting it decided to stop there, or who came up with that, I don't know.
Maybe Jim Gavin came up with it.
I'm sure Jim, the saviour of our game.
We won't get fully into that. And even just I mean, look, we've been talking about the rules and that. I found it quite an enjoyable game. I know it was kind of frantic towards the end. So maybe that was just an enjoyable game without the rules, who knows? But, even at the end, Meath have the ball to the hooter, they take the shot, Roscommon get the ball. Then I suppose the disappointing thing is, I think Ben got blocked down. That was the time to it could have just completely changed the season. We don't know what's going to happen against Cork, but if they got that point after Meath having the ball and all that, it could have been a real turning point.
Yeah, it was a great tackle, but again, I think the shot could have been got off a little bit quicker. But yeah, it's exciting, especially the end of games. And of course, look, the games are good to watch. There's no issue with, like, some of the play is good. There is more space in the full forward line, but this year it's not being exploited as much as it could be. Teams aren't just used to it yet and not making the most of it. was plain to be seen with both teams the last day, just not looking inside when there's clearly 1-on-1, because players have been spent maybe 10 years knowing that there wouldn't be a 1-on-1 inside, but now there very much can be. It needs to be kicked in a lot more. Dublin did that in the first half in Croke Park the last day, and then before they fell apart in that game after 20 minutes, but they did do that and it did work. So teams really need to start doing that, and I'm sure you'll see more of it as the championship goes on. But yeah, it was fine to watch. Again, the 2 points probably added to it, the rules and stuff, but look, it's there's nothing much wrong with it to watch. As I keep saying to you, I think even though there was 2 goals at the weekend, I think there's still less goal scoring than there used to be. There was a good few goals in other games now at the weekend, but in general, I still think there is.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Looking ahead to the Cork game as well, it's a similar situation that we were in last year. We lost to Dublin Mayo before facing Cavan in the neutral game. Now, you probably say this Cork team will be slightly stronger than the Cavan team we faced last year. Roscommon will be favourites, I'm pretty sure, going into it, but it'll be slight. It won't be strong favourites. Like, I suppose the fact that we're in this position last year will be a help. That they know what they have to do. I don't think they'll fear Cork. They played Cork down in Cork a few months ago and won by 14 points. So I think the mood should be fairly okay going into this Cork game.
Yeah, I think it should be different this time. I think that, yeah, like you say, most people will probably expect Roscommon to win now, which is not always a great thing. But I also think the other side of that is, having not played that well all year, we might just have one big game when it matters in us, where players really stand up and step up and start, like we're talking about, the score and everything else. So I think that's possible. But then again, Cork it's very 50-50. Cork have been obviously very good at times, but not great at other times. So it's very much 50-50 import each Saturday week. So it's hard to call. But I do think that Roscommon supporters and media and all that will be hyping up Roscommon and expecting Roscommon to win that. So we'll see how it goes, hopefully.
Yeah, because I always think Cork are either excellent. So we've seen them against Kerry down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and not the one at the weekend, the one in the Munster Championship. They were excellent that night. They've put in huge performances before. I even remember years ago against, I think, Mayo in a qualifier when no one expected them to win. I think Mayo won after extra time. Cork are they always seem to be either excellent or terrible. There's no in between. So obviously we're hoping for the terrible version of Cork to come. But I suppose, like you're mentioning there, like I suppose media and all that would be maybe highly up Roscommon. I don't think we nearly can with the results that have been going. But there will be that expectation like this. If we lose to Cork, I mean, I know we got promoted to Division 1, but the last 3 months would have been disastrous, really, if we go out to Cork in the next game.
Yeah. The whole year, if we're to lose to Cork, will be considered a very poor year. Like you mentioned the promotion, but it was absolute luck, like, that we got promoted. We went to Westmeath, drew at Westmeath, where we were up by 7 or 8 points or more. It was a poor performance against a very average team, as we've seen since. So, I mean, it would be a very poor season if we're not to beat Cork. Like, basically, we have to beat Cork to kind of save the season in terms of how it's going and performance-wise. If we beat Cork, it'd be the only big game that we pull out of the bag, really, because the league was very poor. Like, the last 4 games of the league were very poor. We just about scraped through. Probably didn't deserve to, but did in the end. In the long run, is that good or bad? I don't know. But there has been improvement, as we mentioned, at the weekend. So hopefully that continues on into the Cork game, and hopefully Cork aren't as good as they were that day against Kerry, which they probably won't be, because that's a different type of game that they're up for. So we'll see.
Yeah, because we can still finish second as well. I mean, if Kerry presumably beat Meath, it depends by how much. There's a 14-point gap, so depending if Roscommon have a bit of a lead on Cork going towards the end, they'd have to keep the foot down, because I mean, the difference between finishing second and third could be massive in terms of, if you finish second, you get a home draw, and I suppose you're playing a third place team then, so you could be looking maybe at a Cavan in Group 1, Louth or Clare in Group 3. Obviously, the other group is you're going to get a hard game no matter what. So look, if it's there to possibly finish second, I know we're jumping to conclusions, but if it is there, they're 5 or 6 points up going down the stretch. They have to keep the foot down.
They have to finish in third, which might be more likely. Is you're going to have an extremely difficult game. Like, you're going to be playing a team that has been performing a lot better than us realistically over the course of the year. So to beat Cork and then to go and beat a second place team, it's unlikely those 2 games in a row will get 2 wins out of them. So we'll see how it goes, but we have to beat Cork, and it's very much 50-50. But I do think, given that some players haven't played well the last couple of games, I just think the likes of Kieran, Diarmid, hopefully Darragh, Craig will get a few more scores. Just might happen the next day against Cork. And as we say, Cork, we played against them several times over the years. I've played against them, and they've had, as you said, they've had complete flops on days. They've been shocking. And other days, they have very good footballers, and they can suddenly start scoring from anywhere. So it just depends on what way Cork are on the day too.
Yeah, and as I was saying earlier, last year we beat Cavan, and I suppose you're out the weekend after then, and we actually, we beat Tyrone away, so that wasn't expected. So I suppose, your season can completely change in a week. If you beat Cork and then win that preliminary quarter final, suddenly you're in a quarter final, you'll have Division 1 promotion, and we might be sitting here in a few weeks saying, do you know what, it was a very good year.
Well, good end of year, if that's the case. The rest of the year, what the heck?
But can we expect much more than game promotion to Division 1 and say, look, I'm looking way down.
Oh, yeah, no, it's
managed to get quarterfinals. Can you ask for much more?
No, you can't ask for much more. We tried to get promoted, we got promoted. If we are to beat Cork, it's definitely an improvement. So that will be definitely a good thing, yeah.
Yeah, to finish up on, do you expect us to get the win against Cork? As I said, it's about 2 weeks away. And if so, is there any player that maybe Conor Cox didn't come on, for instance, at the weekend, maybe for 10 minutes with that bit of a wind? He's one of our better long distance shooters. Is there anyone that, in terms of changes, that you'd be thinking of putting in?
I don't know about change, but I do agree with you about Conor Cox. It's someone that isn't afraid to shoot at all. He has come on in games all year, and that's what he's done. He shot straight away. So it was a strange call to make not bring him on to take a few shots the last day with the breeze. I don't know. It could be the same. I know Doyle came on for. Doyle might start the next day. Came on for Eddie. Did a couple of good things. Didn't really get into the game that much, but did a couple of good things. I don't know. Shane Killorn, midfield, might get some game time, I think. I'm actually surprised, to be honest, that Aaron Brady hasn't got a go in goals. I know Carroll is obviously the number one. That's, if you're number one, it tends to stay that way, and that's fair enough. But hasn't been brilliant. The kickouts the last day with the wind, I thought if you had Aaron Brady with the wind there, he could go 80, 90 yards straight down the middle. And as we've seen with obviously Patton and Donegal, that makes a huge difference. They haven't really been the same team, I don't think, with their number 2 keeper there. So that's unlikely to change either. It probably will be Carroll. But Stack is an issue, because having to put him on the best forward that Cork might have on the day, or change him onto him, is a problem for us going forward, because you've Ronan Daly, you've Stack, you've Sen and Lamb, who all like to go forward and all add to attacks. But I think Brian Stack is different in that if there's more awareness when he's on the ball, he can go by a player, he can kick pass. So if we can keep him at centre back for the entire game, it will be a huge advantage, I think.
Well, just someone in the comments said John McManus will be back as well. I know he got married at the weekend, so he'll be back in 2 weeks, and you wouldn't be surprised to see him maybe. And I suppose another player would be Conor Hand, that we didn't see at the weekend. Could he possibly come in? But that's up to Davy Burke and the management. Before we go, I just want to congratulate the Roscommon hurlers as well on a famous win in the Nicky Rackard against Mayo on Saturday. It was actually some game to watch. I was actually thinking Roscommon were dead and buried towards the end. I think Mayo were 1-20 to win that. So congratulations to the hurlers. Fantastic finish, and they'll be playing Christie Ring Hurling next year. Just reminders to anyone watching this live, we'll have the full podcast available to watch on YouTube, and it'll be available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts later on the Rossie podcast. So Conor, thanks very much for joining me, and we'll have a review in a couple of weeks of the Cork game.